Welcome to our series, Is the Book of Mormon an Historical Account of the Lost Tribes of Israel in North America? Welcome to Episode 2, Setting Source Standards. This is Part A, Project Scope and My Biases. Welcome to Episode 2A, Introducing Project Scope and Bias Management. Let me begin by introducing this project's scope while also addressing my own biases. What are my biases, and how do they really affect this scope? Let me begin by introducing this project. This project focuses on a single question. Is the Book of Mormon an accurate historic record of Semitic Jews in the Americas and their encounter with Jesus Christ? That is the scope that I claim to be qualified to testify to as your expert witness, and I'll try not to deviate from them. This is not an attempt to refute every aspect or claim of the Book of Mormon. It is not an attempt to refute the credibility of Joseph Smith as a prophet. In fact, for much of my life, I would have affirmed both the historicity of the Book of Mormon and the credibility of Joseph Smith without question. And even today, both of those claims could be true without any conflict with my other core beliefs or practices. How so? Because it's entirely possible for the Book of Mormon to reflect accurate history of a Native American tribe whose heritage is Semitic without accepting Mormonism or Smith's prophethood. Joseph Smith was a known treasure hunter. To my present knowledge, the only thing of significant financial or historic value he ever found treasure hunting were the golden plates he claims to have translated the Book of Mormon from. Given a lifetime of hunting, it would seem logical to conclude that he did in fact find something, and it was indeed historic. It is even possible that Joseph managed somehow to translate it. Maybe it was written in Iroquoian, and Joseph had an Iroquoian friend who told him what it said. Finding an historic record doesn't make you a prophet. Demonstrating the Book of Mormon's historicity doesn't mean the writing came from God. In fact, we don't even know if everything Joseph Smith wrote even came exclusively from whatever he found, assuming he found anything. It is possible Joseph Smith gained access to some real historical information of Jews in America and then made up additional claims to support a prophet legend. Attaching the book to history in no way requires me to believe anything Joseph Smith claims or accept all the doctrines of the LDS Church. If I claimed the history were true, but the theology was made up, how could you refute me? Do you have the gold plates for us to evaluate and make such a determination? Sadly, no. And frankly, I find that suspicious enough as a historian. In fact, most of the LDS doctrines Christians disagree with are derived from later revelations, like the Book of Mormon and the Doctrines of Covenant. Anyway, I could even completely accept the Book of Mormon as inspired and not affirm LDS beliefs. Indeed, many LDS splinter groups completely trust the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith as a true prophet, but do not believe all of what LDS does. In fact, the variation my family joined did exactly that. The Encyclopedia of Mormonism claims that the first split happened within a year of the Book of Mormon being published, when a group claimed that Joseph Smith had already fallen. In other words, that group could easily claim he fell while writing the Book of Mormon itself, thus accepting only parts of it. Slide the point of his falling chronologically just a little earlier, and we can reject any amount of the Book of Mormon while still completely affirming its general history. I have no bias against finding it historical. And there is reason to think parts of the Book of Mormon were written to support Joseph's polygamous drives, thus allowing us to dispute parts of the Book of Mormon while affirming its historicity. Indeed, the University of Virginia presents a plausible argument that parts of the Book of Mormon itself already laid the foundation for multiple wives, providing that God commanded it and that Smith approved the individual cases. In fact, some scholars claim Smith transcribed a revelation on July 17th, 1831, recommending polygamy and basing it on the Book of Mormon published just a year before. The claim is supported by a letter written just 3 years later to Brigham Young in the wake of splinter groups already moving away from Smith over that very issue. The key portion of the revelation proclaims, quote, "It is Jesus Christ's will that in time ye should take unto you wives of the Lamanites and Nephites," those are Native Americans, "and their posterity might become white and delightsome and just, for even now their females are more virtuous than the Gentiles," unquote. The groundwork for desiring Nephites and Lamanites becoming purified is laid in 2 Nephi 36, which originally read, "Many generations shall not pass away among them, save they shall be a, quote, white and delightsome people," unquote. In the article, "What Does White and Delightsome Mean in the Scriptures?" by the Book of Mormon Central, we are advised the words of that passage were changed to pure and delightsome in 1981, albeit based partly on a note from Joseph Smith, supposedly in the 1840 edition. But it would be easy to make a case that Joseph had designs on encouraging polygamy, possibly with racist motivations, even while writing the Book of Mormon. Thus, it would be perfectly Mormon of me to claim all of the history in the Book of Mormon and still reject any part of LDS or Joseph Smith theology as uninspired. Such is the problem of a religion based on ongoing revelation. And I'm not saying this again to make Joseph Smith look bad. I'm not even suggesting these things are true. I'm just saying there's lots of ways in which I could say the book is historical, but not divine revelation or only partly divine revelation. Again, my purpose is not to defame the Book of Mormon or Joseph Smith here. I'm simply saying my opinions about him personally and the book as inspiration do not limit my objectivity in researching the historicity of the storyline. If anything, I have a bias towards finding the book at least partly historically accurate. That result would be quite useful for me. I am a firm Christian Zionist. If some of the 10 tribes of Israel, lost when the northern kingdom fell, made it to North America and provided irrefutable historic evidence of their history, I would be able to make several claims. To name a few, Israel existed, and archaeology and historic documents on 2 continents prove it. Second, the Davidic claims to Israel and Jerusalem would be reaffirmed by a new source. Third, the Bible would be affirmed as an historical record even further. Fourth, if we could authenticate records of Jesus speaking in the Americas, we'd have proof of his divine nature and historicity. Next, there would be an American connection to the Zionist story. It would make my job a lot easier. Either you or I might be Jewish, just as Joseph Smith claimed he was. In short, Zionism and Christianity would have a much improved position in history if I could affirm enough of the Book of Mormon as historical to place Israelites and Jesus in the Americas between the fall of the Northern Kingdom and the 2nd century AD. The point is, everyone has biases. That doesn't make them evil or inflexible. It simply means they are entering the discussion having already examined some of the evidence and having an idea as to what the evidence might say. They need to be aware of that and commit to containing it in order to arrive in an unbiased, or at least minimally biased, truth. It is possible to have a bias towards seeing the facts one way while emotionally actually wishing the opposite were true or at least partly true. That's where I am. I know enough about the Book of Mormon's claims about Native Americans, and I know enough about Jewish culture, particularly their religious culture, to enter the discussion with considerable doubt any evidence will be found to change my mind about Jews in America. But the truth is, I actually want to find that evidence, even if we only find a little. So, in the case of the context of this project specifically, the project scope pretty much limits the impact of any bias I have against the Book of Mormon on the issue of historicity. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in part 2B, Engaging Bias in Other Experts, the second part of Setting Source Standards. See you then.